There. Now nobody is going anywhere, the officer sneered, tossing the two halves of the blue passport onto the dirty linoleum floor. The entire security line at JFK Terminal 4 went dead silent. Kendra Banks stood there, her hands trembling, not with fear, but with a rage she was struggling to contain. The man smirking at her thought he had just grounded a broke, lying college student. He had no idea he had just destroyed the property of the woman who signed his paychecks. He didn't know that the girl in the hoodie was the newly appointed CEO of the very airline he was contracted to protect, and by the time he found out, it would be far too late to say sorry. The automatic doors of JFK International Airport hissed open, letting in a gust of biting November wind. Kendra Banks adjusted the oversized grey hoodie she was wearing, pulling the strings tighter until only her eyes and the bridge of her nose were visible. To the hundreds of weary travelers rushing past her with rolling suitcases and Starbucks cups, she looked like nobody. Just another 20-something black girl trying to get home for the holidays, maybe a college student on a budget, or an intern running errands. That was exactly the point. Kendra checked her watch. It was a modest digital Casio, a stark contrast to the Patek Philippe she had left on her nightstand in the penthouse suite at the Pierre Hotel. Today wasn't about luxury. Today was about reconnaissance. 3 days ago, the board of directors at Stratton Airways, one of the oldest and most prestigious legacy carriers in the United States, had made a historic vote. Following the sudden death of the previous CEO, Preston Stratton, they had voted in his protégé. Kendra was 32, brilliant, and arguably the most powerful woman in aviation. But the press release wasn't going out until Monday morning. For this weekend, she was a ghost. She wanted to see how her airline treated people when they thought no one important was watching. "Excuse me," a man in a tailored suit grumbled, shoulder-checking Kendra as he rushed toward the priority access lane. "Sorry," Kendra murmured, keeping her head down. She wheeled her small carry-on bag toward the general security checkpoint. She could have bypassed this. She could have been escorted through a private VIP entrance, bypassing the TSA entirely, driven directly to the tarmac in a black SUV. But the complaints about Stratton Airways ground services at JFK had been piling up on her desk for months. Rudeness, racial profiling, lost luggage, and unexplained delays. She needed to see the rot for herself before she could cut it out. The line for general security was a snake of frustration. Babies were crying, the air smelled of stale coffee and body odor, and the tension was palpable. At the front of the line, a TSA agent was barking orders like a drill sergeant. "Belt off! Shoes off! Laptops out! If you have water in that bottle, throw it out or step out of line. I don't have all day." Kendra watched him. He was a large man, his uniform straining at the buttons, with a name tag that read Officer Baxter. His face was flushed red, and he seemed to be deriving a sick sort of pleasure from the anxiety of the travelers. She watched as he dealt with an elderly white woman who had forgotten to take a small bottle of lotion out of her bag. "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear," the woman said, her hands shaking. "I forgot." Baxter sighed, rolling his eyes dramatically. "It's fine, Mum. Just toss it in the bin. Let's keep it moving. No harm done." His voice was dismissive, but surprisingly lenient. Kendra took a mental note. Impatient, but not abusive. Not yet. Then, the dynamic changed. 2 spots ahead of Kendra was a young Hispanic family. The father was struggling to collapse a stroller while holding a sleeping toddler. The mother was trying to organize 3 bins of winter coats and diaper bags. "Hey, hey!" Baxter shouted, slamming his hand on the metal table. The sound echoed through the terminal. "You are holding up the line. Fold the stroller before you get to the belt. Can you read the signs? English? Do you read English?" The father looked up, flustered. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry, the latch is stuck." "Step aside." Baxter pointed a thick finger toward a glass-walled holding area. "You're holding everyone up. Step aside for secondary screening. Now!" "But we'll miss our flight," the mother pleaded. "Not my problem," Baxter sneered. "Move." Kendra felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. The difference in tone was undeniable. She stepped forward as the family was ushered away by another grim-faced guard. Now it was her turn. She stepped up to the podium where Baxter stood, checking IDs and boarding passes. She handed him her phone, which displayed a first-class digital boarding pass for Stratton Airways Flight 09 to London, and her physical US passport. Baxter took the passport. He didn't look at the phone. He looked at Kendra. He looked at her hoodie, her sneakers, her natural hair pulled back in a simple bun. Then he looked down at the passport photo. It was a professional photo. Kendra looking poised in a blazer, hair straightened. He looked back at her, then back at the photo. A smirk curled the corner of his lip. "Boarding pass says first class," Baxter said, his voice loud enough for the people behind her to hear. "That's correct," Kendra said, her voice calm and even. "First class to London. That's a $10,000 ticket," Baxter mused, tapping the passport against his palm. "Walk-up fare." "Is there a problem, officer?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Baxter said. He leaned over the podium, his breath smelling of onions. "See this picture here? This is a very classy-looking lady, a professional, and you—" He looked her up and down with open disgust. "You look like you just rolled out of bed in the Bronx." "I'm traveling for work," Kendra said, her pulse quickening. "I dress for comfort on long flights." "Work?" Baxter laughed. "What kind of work pays for a girl like you to fly first class? You a rapper? Or maybe you're working in a different way, if you catch my drift." Several people in line behind them gasped. A businessman in a blue suit cleared his throat. "Officer, come on, just check her ID." "Stay out of this," Baxter snapped at the man, not breaking eye contact with Kendra. "I'm doing my job. We have strict protocols against fraud." "It's not fraud," Kendra said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. "Scan the boarding pass. Scan the passport. They are valid." Baxter narrowed his eyes. "You telling me how to do my job, little girl? I'm telling you to process my documents so I can board my plane." Baxter's face turned a shade of purple. He wasn't used to pushback. He was used to fear. He was used to compliance. He hated the look in Kendra's eyes. It wasn't fear. It was assessment. She was looking at him like he was a bug under a microscope. "This passport," Baxter said, holding it up by the corner as if it were contaminated. "It looks altered. The lamination is peeling." "It is not peeling. I got it renewed 2 months ago." "I say it's peeling," Baxter insisted. "And the photo doesn't match the person standing in front of me. I suspect this is a stolen document. You stole this, didn't you?" "That is my name, Kendra Banks." "Sure it is," Baxter scoffed. "And I'm the King of England." He looked at the long line of people watching him. He needed to assert dominance. He needed to show them who was in charge. He couldn't let this girl in a hoodie talk back to him. "You know what we do with fake documents?" Baxter asked, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "It's a federal offense to tamper with a passport," Kendra warned him. "I suggest you hand it back to me and call your supervisor." "I am the supervisor on this lane," Baxter shouted. And then he did the unthinkable. The air in the terminal seemed to vanish. Baxter gripped the passport with both hands. It was a standard US passport, sturdy and stiff, but Baxter was a big man fueled by adrenaline and spite. He gritted his teeth, his knuckles turning white. "No!" Kendra shouted, reaching out. but the glass partition separated them. Raipi. The sound was sickeningly loud. It sounded like bone breaking. Baxter tore the booklet right down the spine, separating the photo page from the rest of the binding. He didn't stop there. He took the photo page, the biometric chip page, the key to Kendra's identity and travel, and bent it, creasing it violently before tearing it halfway across the face. He threw the pieces onto the floor at Kendra's feet. "There," Baxter said, breathing heavily, a triumphant grin plastered on his face. "Now it's void. Problem solved. No fly list for you." Kendra stared at the blue pieces of paper scattered on the dirty floor. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. It wasn't just a travel document. It was the sheer audacity of the violation. The absolute, unchecked power this man felt he had over her, simply because of how she looked. Behind her, the crowd erupted. "Oh my God!" a woman screamed. "You can't do that!" the businessman yelled, stepping forward. "That is federal property. You just destroyed her passport." "Get a manager," someone else shouted. "Someone film this." Phones were already out. Kendra could see the flashes. She saw a teenage girl recording on TikTok, her mouth open in shock. Baxter seemed to realize he might have gone too far, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. He doubled down. "Back up!" Baxter yelled at the crowd, putting his hand on his taser holster. "Everyone back the hell up! This is a security breach. This individual attempted to pass a forged document. I neutralized the threat." "A threat?" Kendra whispered. She slowly bent down and picked up the two halves of her passport. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to be steady. She stood up and looked Baxter dead in the eye. "You have made a mistake," Kendra said. Her voice was quiet, terrifyingly calm. "A mistake that is going to cost you everything." Baxter laughed, though it sounded nervous now. "Is that a threat? Are you threatening a TSA officer? That's a felony. I can have you arrested right now." "Call the police," Kendra said. "In fact, call the Port Authority. Call the NYPD. Call the FBI. I want them all here." "Oh, you're going to jail, sweetheart," Baxter sneered. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, we have a code Bravo at checkpoint 4. Hostile passenger, refusing to comply. Suspected fraudulent ID. Send backup." Kendra didn't move. She didn't scream. She reached into her pocket. "Hands where I can see them," Baxter screamed, unclipping his taser. Kendra slowly, deliberately, pulled out her phone. She unlocked it and tapped a single icon, the corporate directory for Stratton Airways. She scrolled past the vice presidents, past the directors, until she found the direct line for the director of airport operations at JFK, a man named Garrick Thorne. She hit call. Baxter watched her, confused. "Who are you calling? You don't get a phone call until you're in cuffs." Kendra put the phone to her ear. It rang twice. "This is Thorne," a deep voice answered. "Garrick," Kendra said, her eyes never leaving Baxter's face. "It's Kendra." There was a pause on the line. The tone of the voice on the other end shifted instantly from professional annoyance to terrified alertness. "Ms. Banks, I wasn't expecting to hear from you until Monday. Is everything all right? Are you in London?" "No, Garrick. I am at JFK. Terminal 4. General Security Checkpoint B." "General Security?" Garrick sounded confused. "Ms. Banks, why didn't you use the VIP? I am currently being detained by a TSA agent named Officer Baxter." Kendra cut him off. "He has just destroyed my passport. He ripped it in half in front of 50 witnesses because he didn't believe I could afford a first-class ticket on my own airline." There was a silence on the other end of the line, so profound it felt heavy. He did what?" Garrick whispered. "He ripped my passport," Kendra repeated. "And he is currently threatening to arrest me." "Ms. Banks," Garrick's voice was now trembling, "do not move. I am in the control tower. I am coming down there right now. I'm bringing the Port Authority chief with me. Do not let them take you anywhere." "Hurry," Kendra said, "because he's coming around the desk." She hung up the phone just as 2 more security guards, alerted by Baxter's radio call, arrived on the scene. They were big men, looking ready for a fight. "That's her!" Baxter pointed at Kendra. "She threatened me. She's got fake docs. Grab her." One of the new guards, a man with a buzz cut, stepped toward Kendra. "Ma'am, put your hands behind your back. Don't touch me," Kendra said firmly. "I am waiting for the police." "We are the authority here," the guard said, reaching for her arm. "Get your hands off her." The voice came from the crowd. It was the businessman in the blue suit. He stepped over the barrier, ignoring the shouts of the TSA agents. He stood next to Kendra, acting as a shield. "I saw the whole thing," the man said, his face red with anger. "I am a lawyer. My name is David Sterling. I represent the firm of Sterling and Cooper. This officer," he pointed a shaking finger at Baxter, "committed a federal crime. I saw him destroy her property without cause. If you touch her, I will sue this entire department into the ground." Baxter's face fell. A lawyer. That was bad. But he had to commit to the lie. "She's a fraud," Baxter yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. "She's a criminal. I am the CEO of Stratton Airways," Kendra said. She didn't shout it. She just said it. Baxter blinked. The other guards froze. The crowd went silent. Then Baxter burst out laughing, a harsh, barking laugh. "CEO." Baxter slapped his knee. "Did you hear that? She says she's the CEO of Stratton Airways. Oh, that is rich. Honey, the CEO of Stratton is an old white guy named Preston Stratton. Preston Stratton died 3 weeks ago," Kendra said. "Yeah, and I'm sure they replaced him with you," Baxter mocked. "A girl in a hoodie who looks like she shops at the dollar store. You're delusional. That's what you are. You're a delusional criminal." He turned to the other guards. "Cuff her. Now. She's making a scene." The guard with the buzz cut hesitated. He looked at Kendra. There was something in her posture, an absolute, unshakable confidence, that made him pause. But Baxter was the senior officer. "I said cuff her!" Baxter screamed. The guard grabbed Kendra's wrist. He twisted it behind her back, hard. Kendra winced but didn't cry out. She felt the cold steel of the handcuffs click around one wrist. "You are making a very big mistake," Kendra whispered to the guard holding her. "Just doing my job, ma'am," the guard grunted, reaching for her other hand. "Stop!" A voice boomed over the terminal loudspeakers. It wasn't an announcement. It was a shout from the hallway behind the security checkpoint. Running toward them, flanked by 4 armed NYPD officers, was a tall man in a pristine suit, looking like he was about to have a heart attack. It was Garrick Thorne, and right behind him was the chief of airport police. But Baxter didn't see them yet. He clicked the second cuff onto Kendra's wrist. "Gotcha," Baxter whispered in her ear. "CEO, my ass. You're nobody." Kendra smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "Turn around, Baxter," she said. The buzz of the terminal, usually a chaotic symphony of announcements and rolling wheels, had been replaced by a suffocating silence. It was the kind of quiet that precedes an explosion. All eyes were locked on the security checkpoint where Kendra Banks stood, hands cuffed behind her back, flanked by 2 burly TSA agents who were beginning to look very uncertain about their life choices. Garrick Thorne, the director of airport operations for JFK, skidded to a halt just shy of the metal detectors. He was a man who prided himself on control. He managed thousands of flights, millions of passengers, and billions of dollars in cargo. But seeing his new boss, the woman who held the fate of his career in her handcuffed hands, shackled like a common criminal, made him look as if he had seen a ghost. Behind him, Chief of Police Brendan O'Malley stepped forward, his hand resting on his holster, his eyes scanning the scene with the practiced calm of a veteran officer. "Release her," Garrick choked out, his voice cracking. He pointed a trembling finger at the guard holding Kendra. "Release her right now." Officer Baxter, who was still riding the high of his power trip, didn't recognize Garrick. He saw a man in a suit shouting orders in his domain. Baxter puffed out his chest, stepping in front of Kendra. "Stay back," Baxter barked. "This is a federal holding area. This woman is in custody for document fraud and threatening a federal officer. Who are you supposed to be?" Garrick's face went from pale to a deep, furious crimson. He walked right up to the glass partition, ignoring the "Do Not Enter" sign. "I am Garrick Thorne. I run this airport," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "And the woman you have in handcuffs is Kendra Banks. She is the chief executive officer of Stratton Airways. She owns the plane you are delaying. She owns the gate you are standing near. In a very real sense, she owns you." Baxter blinked. The smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, but his ego refused to let the information sink in. It was too absurd. CEOs were old men in limousines. They weren't young black women in hoodies. "Yeah, right," Baxter scoffed, though his voice lacked its previous conviction. "And I'm the Pope. Look at her, buddy. Does she look like a CEO to you? She's got a fake passport that's currently in pieces on the floor. She's a nobody trying to scam a free ride." Kendra, despite the pain in her shoulders from the handcuffs, let out a short, cold laugh. It echoed in the silence. "Chief O'Malley," Kendra said, her voice cutting through the tension. She didn't look at Garrick. She looked directly at the police chief. Chief O'Malley recognized her. He had seen the internal memos. He had seen the security briefings regarding the transition of power at Stratton Airways. He knew exactly who she was. His face went rigid. "Officer Baxter!" Chief O'Malley boomed, his voice projecting authority that Baxter could only dream of having. "Unlock those cuffs, immediately." "Chief, that is a direct order," O'Malley roared. "You have detained a high-profile VIP without cause. You have destroyed property. Uncuff her, or I will arrest you for assault and unlawful imprisonment right here in front of this crowd." The color drained from Baxter's face so fast it looked like a curtain falling. He looked at the chief. He looked at Garrick. Then, slowly, he turned to look at Kendra. For the first time, he really looked at her. He saw the steely intelligence in her eyes. He saw the posture that remained regal even in restraint. He saw the Patek Philippe watch he had missed earlier because of her sleeve, a watch that cost more than his annual salary. His hand started to shake. He fumbled for the key on his belt. The guard holding Kendra stepped away as if she were radioactive. "I didn't know," he muttered, raising his hands. "I was just following orders." Baxter's hands were trembling so badly he dropped the key. It clattered onto the linoleum. "Pick it up," Kendra said softly. Baxter crouched down, humiliation burning his neck. He picked up the key and approached her. "Apologize," Garrick demanded. "No," Kendra interrupted. "Not yet." Baxter unlocked the cuffs. The metal clicked open, and Kendra brought her hands forward, rubbing her wrists. There were red marks where the steel had dug in. She rotated her shoulders, taking a deep breath. She reached down and picked up the two halves of her passport from the floor. She dusted them off gently, then held them up to Baxter's face. "You said this was fake," she stated. "Scan it." "Ma'am, Baxter stammered. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a wet, desperate fear. "Scan it," she commanded. "Prove to everyone here that you are incompetent, not just malicious." Baxter took the torn page with a shaking hand. He walked over to his podium and placed the mangled barcode under the scanner. He typed in the manual override code for damaged documents. The screen beeped. A large green check mark appeared. Valid. Banks, Kendra J. U.S. citizen. Clearance level. Global entry. Diplomatic priority. The screen was facing the crowd. A collective gasp went through the line of passengers. "It's real!" the teenage girl filming shouted. "He ripped up a real passport!" Kendra walked around the podium. She stood next to Baxter, who was now sweating profusely. She leaned into the microphone he had used to yell at the family earlier. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kendra's voice broadcasted through the terminal speakers. "My name is Kendra Banks. I am the CEO of Stratton Airways. I apologize for the delay this officer has caused. Because of the inconvenience, everyone currently standing in this security line will receive a voucher for a free round-trip flight to anywhere Stratton flies, valid for 1 year. My assistant will be at the gate to collect your information." The terminal erupted. People cheered. The tension broke into jubilant chaos. Kendra turned off the microphone and looked at Baxter. He was shrinking, trying to make himself small. "Now," Kendra whispered to him, "you and I are going to have a little chat. In private." I can't leave my post," Baxter tried, his voice weak. "You don't have a post anymore," Garrick Thorne said, stepping up to them. "I'm suspending your security badge effective immediately. Chief O'Malley, please escort Mr. Baxter to the interrogation room. We have a lot to discuss." "And bring the lawyer," Kendra added, pointing to David Sterling, who was still standing at the barrier, looking smug. "I want a witness." As the police officers flanked Baxter and marched him away, the crowd parted. They held up their phones, recording the walk of shame. Baxter kept his head down, but Kendra walked with her head high, the torn pieces of her identity clutched in her hand. The real drama hadn't even started yet. The interrogation room at Terminal 4 was a soulless box of grey walls, fluorescent lights, and a stainless steel table bolted to the floor. It was designed to make drug smugglers and terrorists feel small. Currently, it was occupied by Officer Baxter, who sat slumped in a metal chair, looking like a deflated balloon. On the other side of the table sat Kendra Banks. She had removed her hoodie, revealing a simple but expensive black silk blouse underneath. Garrick Thorne stood nervously in the corner, while David Sterling, the lawyer, sat quietly with a notepad, acting as the independent observer Kendra had requested. Chief O'Malley leaned against the door, arms crossed. "I didn't know," Baxter said for the 10th time. He was wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "If I had known who you were, obviously I wouldn't have—" "You wouldn't have done your job?" Kendra finished for him. Her voice was deceptively light. "So, what you're saying is, the protocols only apply to people you think are poor." "No, that's not what I meant," Baxter backpedaled. "I mean, you fit the profile." "What profile is that, Mr. Baxter?" David Sterling asked, looking up from his notepad. "The profile of a young black woman in casual clothing." "Suspicious behavior," Baxter snapped, trying to regain some ground. "She was hiding her face, she was quiet, and the passport, the laminate looked loose." "The laminate was pristine until you snapped it in half," Kendra said. She placed the torn pieces on the table between them. "But we aren't here to talk about the passport anymore. That's just property damage. That's a misdemeanor. I'm interested in something else." Kendra pulled her phone out. She tapped the screen and slid it across the table toward Baxter. On the screen was a grainy video feed. It was black and white, time-stamped from 2 weeks prior. It showed the baggage handling area of the terminal, a secure zone where passengers were never allowed. In the video, a man in a TSA uniform was standing over an open suitcase. He looked around furtively, then quickly reached into the bag, pulled out a watch and a tablet, and shoved them into his waistband. Baxter stared at the video. His mouth went dry. The man in the video was him. "We've been watching you for 3 months, Baxter," Kendra said. The room went deadly silent. Even Garrick Thorne looked surprised. He hadn't known about this part. "What?" Baxter whispered. Stratton Airways started receiving an unusual number of theft complaints from passengers departing from Terminal 4, Kendra explained, her tone shifting from victim to prosecutor. Jewelry, electronics, cash, all missing from checked bags. The TSA claimed it was baggage handlers. The handlers claimed it was the TSA. So when I took over as CEO, I authorized a private investigation. We installed hidden cameras in the screening zones. She leaned forward. "I didn't come to this checkpoint today to test your customer service, Baxter. I came to confirm a pattern. I wanted to see if the man who steals from passengers is the same man who bullies them." That video could be anyone," Baxter stammered, but his eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit. "It's you," Chief O'Malley said from the door. "We have the timestamps. We matched them to your shift logs. We have you on camera hitting 4 different bags in a single shift." "You profiled me," Kendra said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You looked at me and decided I was powerless. You decided I was someone you could bully, someone whose day you could ruin just for the fun of it. You thought I was working in a different way. But while you were busy judging my hoodie, you forgot that I'm the one who signs the contracts for this terminal." Baxter looked at the lawyer, David Sterling. "You're a lawyer. Help me. This is entrapment." Sterling chuckled, closing his notebook. "Mr. Baxter, entrapment is when law enforcement induces you to commit a crime you wouldn't otherwise commit. Ms. Banks didn't tell you to steal those items, and she certainly didn't tell you to destroy her passport. She just stood there. You did the rest all by yourself. I'm just here to witness the confession." "I didn't confess to anything." "You just did," Kendra said. "Your face said it all." She stood up and walked to the one-way mirror on the wall. She knew that behind it, the TSA Federal Security Director was watching, likely terrified of the lawsuit that was brewing. "Here is what is going to happen," Kendra said, turning back to Baxter. "Garrick is going to revoke Stratton Airways' contract with your specific security firm. That's a $20 million contract gone, which means your boss is going to be looking for a scapegoat. You." "Please," Baxter begged. His arrogance had completely evaporated, leaving behind a pathetic, frightened man. "I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids. You can't do this over a passport." "You didn't care about the family in front of me," Kendra reminded him. "You didn't care about their flight or their stress. You didn't care about my travel plans. You enjoyed the power. You got a kick out of making us feel small. Well, Mr. Baxter, how does it feel?" She looked at Chief O'Malley. "Chief, I'd like to press charges for the destruction of federal property, for the assault, since your officer twisted my arm, and for the grand larceny regarding the stolen items from Stratton passengers." "With pleasure," O'Malley said. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt, real police cuffs, not the cheap zip ties Baxter sometimes used. "Wait!" Baxter stood up, knocking his chair over. "You can't arrest me. I know things. I know about the other guys. I can give you names." Kendra paused. She held up a hand to stop the chief. "Names?" she asked. "Ideally, I'm not the only one," Baxter said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "It's a ring. The shift supervisors, the baggage handlers. There's a system. If you arrest me, the others will just go underground. But if you cut me a deal, I can give you the whole operation." Kendra looked at Garrick, then at the chief. A slow smile spread across her face. This was better than she had planned. She had come for a rude agent. She had stumbled onto a crime syndicate. "Sit down, Baxter," Kendra said, "and start talking. If you lie to me, I will make sure you spend the next 10 years in a cell. If you tell the truth, well, maybe you'll only spend 5. Baxter slumped back into his chair, defeated. Kendra turned to Garrick. "Get me a new passport. Emergency expedited. I have a flight to London to catch." "Miss Banks," Garrick said nervously. "The flight, it left 20 minutes ago." Kendra checked her watch. "Then bring the plane back. Bring it back. Turn it around, Garrick, or get another jet ready. I have a board meeting in London tomorrow morning, and I am going to walk into that room with a story that will shake the industry." She looked back at Baxter, who was now weeping softly into his hands. "But first," Kendra said, "I want to hear every single name on your list." The interrogation room smelled of stale sweat and fear. Officer Baxter, once the tyrant of Terminal 4, was now unraveling like a cheap sweater. He sat hunched over the metal table, scribbling names onto a yellow legal pad provided by David Sterling. His hand shook so violently that the handwriting was barely legible, a jagged scrawl of betrayal. Kendra Banks stood by the one-way mirror, her arms crossed, watching the man destroy his own colleagues to save his skin. She felt no pity, only a cold, calculating resolve. This wasn't just about a ripped passport anymore. This was about the integrity of Stratton Airways. "Is that everyone?" Chief O'Malley asked, leaning over the table. That's the main crew," Baxter stammered, dropping the pen. "The morning shift supervisors, 3 baggage handlers in Zone C, and the guy in the oversized cargo bay." "And who moves the goods?" Kendra asked, stepping away from the wall. "You steal the items, but you can't walk out with them. Who fences the stolen jewelry and electronics?" Baxter swallowed hard. He looked at the mirror, then at the floor. "We don't fence it. We load it." "Load it?" Garrick Thorne asked, confused. "Load it where?" "Onto the catering trucks," Baxter whispered. "The trucks go out to the planes. The drivers take the special packages out of the secure zone when they swap the food carts. They bypass the exit screening because they're vendors." Kendra's eyes narrowed. "Which vendor?" "Sky High Catering," Baxter said. Garrick gasped. "Sky High? That's our exclusive partner. We just signed a 5-year renewal with them." "And who signs off on the catering manifests?" Kendra asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Because a driver can't just smuggle bags of diamonds and iPads without a manager looking the other way." Baxter hesitated. He looked at Garrick, then at Kendra. It's not a catering manager." "Who is it?" Kendra demanded. "It's Mr. Dalloway," Baxter said softly. The room went silent. Garrick Thorne staggered back, as if he'd been punched. "Frank?" Garrick whispered. "Frank Dalloway? My deputy director? The man who is currently running the operations floor while I'm in here?" "He takes 30%, Baxter confirmed. "He schedules the compromised crews. He ensures the complaints get lost in the system. He's the one who told us to target the economy class types because they don't have lawyers." Kendra looked at Garrick. The director of airport operations looked sick. His right-hand man, a guy he had probably known for years, was the architect of the theft ring. "Garrick," Kendra said sharply, "pull it together." I trusted him," Garrick stammered. "He was at my wedding. And now he is going to be in a cell," Kendra said. "Chief O'Malley, we need to move. If Dalloway realizes Baxter has been detained this long, he'll know the jig is up. He'll try to purge the evidence." "We can't just storm the ops center," O'Malley warned. "It's a glass box in the middle of the terminal. If he sees us coming, he could delete the digital logs or alert the drivers to dump the stash." "He won't see you coming," Kendra said. She walked over to the table and picked up her destroyed passport. Because he's not looking for the police. He's looking for me. What do you mean? Garrick asked. He knows there was a commotion at security, Kendra plotted, but he probably thinks it was just a regular, unruly passenger. He doesn't know I'm the CEO. He thinks I'm just a girl with a ripped passport. Kendra turned to the chief. Give me a radio wire. I'm going to go see Mr. Dalloway and ask for a refund. 10 minutes later, Kendra Banks was walking through the administrative corridors of JFK, flanked by Garrick Thorne. She had put her hoodie back up, looking every bit the frustrated traveller. Hidden under the hoodie, a small microphone was taped to her collarbone. They reached the double doors marked Terminal Operations Center. Garrick scanned his badge. The doors hissed open. The room was a hive of activity. Screens monitoring flight paths, weather patterns and gate assignments. Standing on the central elevated platform was Frank Dalloway. He was a sharp-dressed man in his late 40s with a winning smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was on the phone, laughing. "Garrick!" Dalloway called out as he saw them enter. He hung up the phone. "Where have you been? Rumor has it some TSA goon went postal on a passenger. Please tell me we don't have a lawsuit on our hands." "Frank," Garrick said, his voice tight. "This is the passenger, Ms. Banks." Dalloway looked down at Kendra. He saw the hoodie, the sneakers, the casual vibe. He gave her a condescending, pitying smile. "Oh, you poor thing," Dalloway cooed, walking down the steps. "I heard what happened. Officer Baxter is a loose cannon. I assure you, Stratton Airways takes this very seriously. We'll get you a voucher for a meal and get you on the next flight out in economy." "First class," Kendra corrected him. "And my passport is destroyed." Right, Dalloway sighed, checking his watch. "Look, Ms. Banks, these things take time. Why don't you go down to the customer service desk on the ground level? They have forms for this." "I don't want a form," Kendra said, stepping closer. "I want to know about the watch." Dalloway froze. "Excuse me." "My watch," Kendra lied smoothly. "I had a Patek Philippe in my checked bag, the bag that went through the scanner 10 minutes before I did. The tracker says it's still in the building. Baxter said you might know where it is." Dalloway's smile vanished. His eyes darted to Garrick, then back to Kendra. "I think you're confused, miss. If you lost an item, fill out a claim." "I'm not confused, Frank," Kendra said, her voice hardening. "Baxter told me about the catering trucks. He told me about the 30% cut." Dalloway's face went pale, then flushed with anger. He stepped into her personal space, his voice dropping to a menacing hiss. "I don't know who you think you are, little girl, but you are playing a dangerous game. You take your voucher and you walk away, or I will have you banned from this airport for life." "Is that a threat?" Kendra asked. "It's a promise," Dalloway sneered. "Nobody listens to people like you. You're just noise." "Actually," Kendra said, reaching up and pulling down her hood, "everyone listens to me. I'm your boss." "What?" Dalloway blinked. "I am Kendra Banks, the CEO of Stratton Airways," she announced, her voice ringing across the operations room. "And you, Frank, are fired." Dalloway laughed. It was a nervous, disbelief-filled sound. "CEO? You're lying! Garrick, get this crazy woman out of here." Garrick didn't move. He looked at Dalloway with pure disgust. "She's telling the truth, Frank, and the police are listening." Dalloway's eyes widened. He spun around toward the exit, but the doors burst open. Chief O'Malley and 6 uniformed officers stormed in. "Frank Dalloway!" O'Malley shouted. "Hands where I can see them!" Dalloway panicked. He grabbed a heavy stapler from a nearby desk and hurled it at Kendra, trying to create a distraction to run for the back exit. Garrick lunged, tackling his former friend to the ground. They crashed into a bank of monitors. Dalloway punched and kicked, screaming obscenities, but the police were on him in seconds. They dragged him up, cuffing his hands behind his back. "You can't prove anything," Dalloway screamed as they hauled him away. "It's my word against a thief's." "We have the ledgers," a voice called out. Everyone turned. It was David Sterling, the lawyer. He was standing at Dalloway's unlocked computer terminal. "He left his email open," Sterling said with a grin. "There's a folder here marked Inventory. It lists every stolen item, the black market value, and the payouts to the staff. It dates back 3 years. Ms. Banks, you just recovered about $4 million in stolen assets." Kendra let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She looked at Garrick, who was brushing dust off his suit, looking heartbroken but relieved. "I'm sorry, Ms. Banks," Garrick said quietly. "I should have known." "You know now," Kendra said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Clean this place up, Garrick. Fire everyone on that list. I want a new team by Monday." "Yes, ma'am." "Now," Kendra said, turning to the window where the flashing lights of the police cars reflected on the glass. "I believe I have a plane to catch, and this time nobody is going to stop me." London was grey and raining, a stark contrast to the chaos of New York, but the atmosphere inside the boardroom of the Stratton Global Headquarters in Canary Wharf was far stormier than the weather outside. The boardroom was a cavernous space of mahogany and glass overlooking the Thames. Seated around the long oval table were the 12 members of the board of directors. They were mostly older white men, titans of industry with titles like Lord and Sir, wearing suits that cost more than most people's cars. At the head of the table sat Lord Arthur Pendergast, the chairman of the board. He was 70 years old, with silver hair and a face carved from granite. He checked his pocket watch with an impatient sigh. "She is late," Pendergast grumbled. "This is exactly what I warned you about. Preston's protégé or not, she is too young, too inexperienced, and clearly too disorganized to manage a transatlantic schedule." "Give her a moment, Arthur," said Cecilia Vance, the only other woman on the board, though she was more of a silent partner. There was a security incident at JFK. An incident she likely caused, Pendergast scoffed. "I saw the reports. A passport issue? It's amateur hour. We need a steady hand at the wheel, not a disruption." He looked around the table, gathering support. "I propose that if she does not arrive in the next 10 minutes, we move to a vote of no confidence. We can appoint an interim CEO by lunch." Several heads nodded. They were uncomfortable with Kendra. She represented change. She represented a world they didn't quite understand, a world of diversity, technology, and accountability. They wanted the status quo, the heavy oak doors boom open. Kendra Banks walked in. She didn't look tired, despite having flown across the ocean on a hastily prepared Gulfstream jet after missing her commercial flight. She was impeccable. She wore a sharp, navy blue power suit, her hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. She carried nothing but a thin leather folder. She didn't apologize for being late. She walked straight to the head of the table, standing right next to Lord Pendergast's chair. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said. Her voice was calm, projecting to the back of the room without shouting. "And Lady Vance." "You're late," Pendergast snapped, not looking up. "We were just discussing your suitability for this role." "I know," Kendra said. "I read the meeting minutes you drafted before I even landed." "You think I'm a risk?" "You are a risk," Pendergast said, finally turning to face her. "You were detained by airport security yesterday, like a common criminal. It's all over social media. CEO in handcuffs. It's a PR disaster. Stratton Airways stock is down 2 points this morning." Kendra smiled. It was the same dangerous smile she had given Baxter. "Actually, Arthur, the stock is up 4 points as of 10 minutes ago, she corrected him. She opened her folder and slid a single sheet of paper down the table. Pendergast picked it up, frowning. What is this? That is a press release that went out while I was in the elevator, Kendra said. It details how the new CEO of Stratton Airways personally went undercover to expose a multi-million-dollar theft ring operating at our flagship terminal. It highlights how I worked with the NYPD to arrest 12 corrupt employees, including a senior manager, and recovered stolen assets belonging to our customers. The room went silent. Pendergast read the paper, his eyes widening. You spun it? I didn't spin it, Kendra said, leaning her hands on the table. I lived it. I went into the trenches. I saw how our customers were being treated. I saw the rot that you allowed to fester. I? Pendergast sputtered. I have nothing to do with JFK operations. Don't you? Kendra asked. She pulled another document from her folder. This is a budget approval form from 3 years ago. It authorizes a 15% cut to ground security oversight at JFK. It was signed by you, Arthur. You cut the budget for internal auditing. That cut is what allowed Frank Dalloway to operate unchecked for 3 years. A murmur went through the room. The other board members looked at Pendergast with suspicion. That was a standard cost-saving measure, Pendergast defended, his face turning red. It was negligence, Kendra countered, and it cost us millions in theft and reputation. But today? Today we are the heroes. The public loves a crusader. They love a CEO who fights for them. The narrative isn't CEO in handcuffs. It's undercover boss cleans house. She walked around the table, making eye contact with every single director. I am not here to be a figurehead, Kendra stated firmly. I am not here to sign your dividend checks and stay quiet. I am here to run this airline, and that means things are going to change. We are going to treat every passenger, from first class to economy, with dignity. Because if we don't, there are plenty of other airlines that will. She stopped back at the head of the table. Now, Kendra said, looking down at Pendergast. You moved for a vote of no confidence. I suggest we have a different vote. What vote? Pendergast whispered, sensing the power shifting in the room. A vote on the new strategic direction of Stratton Airways, Kendra said, with me as the chairman. Pendergast stood up, furious. You can't just, I second the motion, a voice said. Pendergast spun around. It was William Sterling, a board member and relative of the lawyer who had helped Kendra at JFK. He was smiling. And I third it, said Cecilia Vance. One by one, the hands went up. The old guard was crumbling. The reality of the market, the PR victory, and Kendra's undeniable competence had won them over. Pendergast looked around, realized he was beaten, and slowly sat down. Excellent, Kendra said. She sat down in the empty chair at the head of the table, not Pendergast's chair, but her own, which she pulled right up to the front. Now, let's talk about the in-flight meal service, she said, opening her notebook, because I heard the coffee is terrible. 6 months later, the atmosphere in the Queens County Criminal Court was heavy with resignation. Former Officer Baxter stood before the judge, clad in an orange jumpsuit that fit poorly around his waist. He looked 10 years older than he had that day at Terminal 4. His arrogance was gone, eroded by months of legal fees, a divorce filing from his wife, and the crushing weight of public humiliation. The judge adjusted his glasses. Mr. Baxter, for your role in the grand larceny ring and the assault on a passenger, I am sentencing you to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution. The gavel banged. a sharp, final sound that echoed like the ripping of a passport. Baxter closed his eyes as the bailiffs took his arms. As he was led away, he looked into the gallery. Sitting there in the back row was Kendra Banks. She wasn't smiling. She simply nodded once, a silent acknowledgement that justice had been served, before standing up and walking out into the sunlight. Back at JFK, the changes were palpable. The lines moved faster. The staff smiled. And near the first-class check-in, a familiar Hispanic family was checking in for a flight to Disney World, a trip entirely paid for by Stratton Airways. Kendra watched them from the balcony of the new CEO lounge. She checked her wrist. A brand-new Patek Philippe gleamed under the lights. She had learned the hard way that power isn't about the title on your business card or the price of your ticket. True power is the ability to stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. She took a sip of her coffee, picked up her bag, and headed for the gate. She had an airline to run. And that is the incredible story of how one arrogant TSA agent learned the hardest lesson of his life. Never judge a book by its cover, and never, ever rip up a black woman's passport. Kendra Banks didn't just get revenge. She cleaned house and changed the system, proving that true leadership is about protecting people, not bullying them. What would you have done if you were in Kendra's shoes? Would you have waited for the police, or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that karma is always watching. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.